Okay. All right, well, I appreciate everybody coming to the Lunch and Learn. This is going to be an awesome time. We have my esteemed colleague here, my other esteemed colleague. We're going to talk about some things around healthcare. Did everybody get a chance to get their food? Yes? How is the food? It smells delicious. I can't wait to eat. So my name is Sean Riley. Oh boy. Do I have to move away from this? Stay here. So my name is Sean Riley. I work at Fortinet, going on 5 years at the company, and I manage our industry and vertical practices. We have three main practices: retail, healthcare, which includes pharma, as well as what's called industrial or operational technology. We take it pretty serious at Fortinet. As a $5.2 billion company, we're not trying to come in and just sell you guys products, right? We're trying to you guys speak, understand what problems you guys are trying to solve, and all the people that are on the teams have been, positioning or working on technology or building solutions. And maybe they worked at companies like Accenture, or they could have worked at some of our competitors for years, trying to solve things that you guys, it's important to you, not just selling you a firewall or a switch or what have you, right? So that's my teams. We're here to talk about a bunch of digital transformation topics today. I'm going to walk around with the microphone. If anybody has any questions, this is an open forum. We'd love to hear your feedback, right? Make it a little bit more interesting than just sitting here and watching two people speak on stage, right? I'll probably ask a few questions. I won't stump the chump, but maybe I will. I don't know. But I'm going to give it away to Jay to start this off.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jay Mervis. I'm the Senior Director of Healthcare Sales at Fortinet. Like Sean said, I work for him. I'm here today with Salwa Rafee, who runs the Accenture practice. I've got about 137 slides, so I hope everybody's got enough food to get through lunch. One of the things that we want to do is make sure that we get through the education session here today. I'm real happy to be here, Salwa. I don't know if you want to give your background, but I spent 23 years in a large national reseller. Point of care is pretty intimate to me. Today we're going to pivot and talk about some other things, but it's all about enabling healthcare and going through the whole process of improving patient care without changing bedpans. That's literally why I got into this business 15 years ago. How do we make an impact? Salwa, let's talk about what your background is.
Sure. All right. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Jay, for this great opportunity. Thank you to the Fortinet team as well. My name is Salwa Rafee, so I manage our global healthcare security business for Accenture. And yeah, my background, I come from a biomedical engineering background, so all of my career is in healthcare IT, security, technology, and really using technology as an enabler for better patient outcomes, for more efficient hospitals, for better payers organizations. So, healthcare has been my industry over 20 plus years. I'm not going to say the exact number of years because,
I was going to say 12.
Yeah, exactly, 12 years. And, we have been seeing tons of changes in healthcare, tremendous change. The whole idea of the technological advancement in the industry and how that could be enabled by cybersecurity. And the objective is not just selling cybersecurity solutions, is how to protect the patient data, how to protect the privacy of all of us, because all of us are citizens and patients at the same time.
Right, so protecting that PHI and seeing the new proliferation of technology. We think about, everybody's young enough in the room, most of us are young enough in the room to remember when the infotainment and the bedside patient envelope, we put PCs in hospital rooms, and oh my goodness, this is going to transform medicine, and now we're seeing the healthcare industry with the digital transformation leverage, 5G technology and AI, and taking all of the things in the digital transformation from let's virtualize, let's build out server farms and leverage technology faster. To do that now, people are using the metaverse possibly. It's pretty cool stuff. So
Absolutely.
Salwa, let's talk about how healthcare and life sciences organizations have had a significant increase in ransomware.
Yes.
Attacks in the past year. What's your perspective on these and the evolving threat landscape?
Yeah.
What are you seeing in the consulting business?
I agree. Healthcare has the lion's share of all ransomware attacks worldwide. If you think that 25% goes of ransomware attacks goes to healthcare, as opposed to all the other 19 other industries that we hear of. So healthcare has a lion's share, and that's because of main big clear answers to me. The legacy infrastructure. I was talking last week with a CISO who is serving in one of the healthcare systems. He came from a financial services, so he was a CISO at the bank, and now he's a CISO at one of the hospital systems in the West. And he was shocked by the amount of legacy infrastructure, networking, medical devices. And he's like, the industry is 10 to 15 years behind the technological advancement of any of the other industries. If you look at the spending as well, Jay, if you think the banking, again, financial services have lots of money. They spend over 20% of their IT budget on cybersecurity solutions and tools and services. We, as an industry, the average spend is like 3 to 5%. So you can imagine the struggle and the continuous challenges that we have as we see our clients managing through the entire security attacks. Also, the attack surface in healthcare is exponentially larger than any other industry. Look at the attack surface when a patient comes to a GP or a specialist, and the workflow of a patient going through diagnostic, all of the rounds of diagnostic, whether it's X-ray, ultrasound, lab rounds, and then going through the treatment protocols as well. This, every time the patient leaves a huge fingerprint and a huge amount of data. Given to, in addition to that, you're looking at remote monitoring systems. You're looking at telemedicine. You're looking at the Fitbits and the tracking solutions. You're looking at all of the medical devices, as we're saying, the IoMT. So not only the IoT in hospitals and payers and providers, but the IoMT, which is the Internet of Medical Things. Tremendous attack surface. Nobody is putting the time or the resources to monitor the vulnerabilities in all of these attack vectors. So no wonder we have the lion's share of ransomware attacks. Lots of work to be done here.
Yeah, and we see the threat actors being more and more sophisticated with exactly what you're talking about. When you start doing the math equations, right? So I grew up building out server farms. Like we were just joking, hey, it's great that you know how to build a server farm, Jay, when you're doing math, 8, 16, 64, 128, those kind of things. And when you start talking about 5.7 devices per nurse times 800 beds in a hospital, 15 devices per,
Yep.
and all this stuff used to be analog that was on paper charts and record rooms, and now it's all digitized, and all these things, some get dropped off, and they run for 20 years on Windows History Channel, ESPN Classic, what might have you.
Yeah.
So we want to go on that journey with many customers we partner with, or medical device manufacturers, or biotech folks to be able to leverage the data and protect all that, whether it's IP or patient data. That's our concern on the care continuum. So.
Absolutely. If you also look at the value chain in a healthcare setting, so it is, the government regulatory authorities, all the payers, providers, pharma companies running clinical trials, running cost effectiveness and efficacies with hospitals on their medications. You mentioned the med device manufacturers as well. These manufacturers, and there are major manufacturers out of the US, out of Europe, they are also testing and going through the FDA cycle to get approval on their IoMT. All of these are part of the legal and the compliance issues with HIPAA and the similar organizations out of each country, like Health Canada, the EU, the Australian agencies. All of them are running around patient privacy, compliance, efficacies of pharmaceuticals, and the tons of medical data that is generated as a result of that. So, you mentioned the cyber hackers are very sophisticated. Many of them are funded, nation state funded, super sophisticated, especially coming from the Russian and the Chinese organizations. And we are a critical infrastructure industry. Take down healthcare in a country, and the whole economy collapses. So the biggest reward for these hackers is to target our hospitals and payers plan and the public health systems.
Right, and 22% of the economy in the United States. It's interesting because they play the threat actors play the percentages of what medical records, what kind of clinical trials. There's so many things that are public data now that they don't have to spray and pray and hope that they hit an exchange server that hasn't been patched. That's where we see a lot of our threat intelligence that we see at Fortinet, to where are the threat actors coming from, how are they going after those facilities, and what are they trying to compromise, which is a key component from what you're seeing to get in front of the threat actors.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And we're going to talk about the technology, what's happening, what's happening in the industry and the technology, and how we are getting ahead of all of that, as we want to secure the digital transformation in healthcare. We want to make sure, the only reason, if you look at, recently, like how it started, the DevOps, is because they were originally separated. Development efforts and operations were separated as organizations. So the developers will throw the technology and the software to the operations who are left to their devices. They have to take care of the operations part of this technology. Now we're thinking, of course, DevOps have to be aligned together. And that has been going really well because of the agility of the development. Now we can do incremental software changes. And now we're saying, no, it has to be DevSecOps. Security has to be part from day one as part of the DNA. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, ultimately, we want to have security as, it's like the oxygen. If you're bringing a software, if you're bringing a medical device, if they don't have the security controls, then the hospital network is not going to talk to it. It is as dramatic and drastic as that. If you don't have the security embedded by design, then it's an obsolete piece of device, obsolete IoT, and the patients should not be touching it.
Well, yeah, and leadership is coming in now, and we've seen a big shift in that over the 2.5 years I've been at Fortinet, to where security didn't have a seat at the table before. We talk about when customers had a security program and they had data center firewalls and they had endpoint protection, and that was it. Yeah. Now there's about 27 different things. So one of the things that we discussed, let's chat about clinical and operational impacts. And the downtimes have been unprecedented.
Yes.
Salwa, what are you seeing from a patient care, safety, revenue, brand impact, getting in front of that, or what happens when a customer gets compromised?
Yes. So incident response is a major and a critical part of anything. And we're talking about an integrated incident response planning, a comprehensive one. Again, I see most of our clients have a paper that has an incident response. This is the incident response plan, right? It's not comprehensive. It has to be like every part of the stakeholders of the organizations, all the way from the CEO to the end users, have to have a stake in the incident response planning. Once an organization gets hit, everything really comes to a halt, because can they go back to a paper-based system? They have no idea what the records are. The whole thing has been encrypted by the hackers. The hospitals, as we see, and recently we heard of many major healthcare systems that got hit, and they couldn't provide any services. They were turning down the patients from not just treatment, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, but also diagnostics and the basic services that they couldn't see if the patients are allergic to certain substances, or the family history, or how we can provide the basic scheduling for patient visits. It really has a drastic and adverse action on the hospitals. Revenue loss, of course, no business continuity, and the branding and the business reputation, but frankly, more importantly, is the patient safety. I don't know if you heard, but there was a large healthcare system out of Europe that they were hit by a major ransomware attack. They were turning down all the patients, and there has been some fatalities. When the patient couldn't get to the ER unit, they had to be turned to another hospital that is 20, 50 miles away, and they died in the ambulance system. So this is not, this is what makes healthcare very special, because security for us is patient safety. It's a life or death situation. If you don't see the patient, they don't see their data, and you can't provide these services.
Yeah. And one of the things that you touched on earlier was the interconnection of the payer, the pharma, and the provider world. So when the operations get impacted, we've seen retail pharmacy outfits or somebody that's getting cancer treatment that it's made in an academic medical center that they do cancer is one of their primary things that they go and solve for.
Yeah.
And when the tabletop exercises and the ransomware on the tech side, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, but most customers are, some of the feedback we've heard is, well, we didn't have enough paper prescription pads, or the CVS and the Walgreens were completely backed up around the block because there's no automation with the e-prescribe. Because e-prescribe has been around for about 12 years, right? 12 years now to make sure that we can automate those functions and people get their medication in a timely manner. So that's one of the bigger impacts that we've seen, as well as the not able to provide services. There's been multiple deaths, and that's part of the cause is to provide better patient care.
Absolutely.
And we're not digitizing this just for the fun of it. It's to get those precision medicine outcomes.
Exactly. And I'll give you another example. Frankly, most of us would have heard of the Irish healthcare system when it was hit by a big ransomware attack. It's the national healthcare system in the entire country of Ireland. And it was, through a phishing campaign. It wasn't that hard to insert and embed and inject the malware in the hospital systems. So it was, they were asking for, of course, multi-million-dollar of ransom from the government. And while the healthcare systems are still debating whether to pay ransom or not, the hackers decided to say, you know what, we feel sorry, we feel bad. Here is your decryption key. With the key, they couldn't restore the national healthcare system. It took them weeks and months to get back with the key, to get back to business as usual. It just shows you how complex the system is. And if you have data on the cloud, if you're operating thousands and millions of healthcare providers, clinicians, contractors, nurses, getting back to the EMR, getting back to the basic services and the normal workflow has been a struggle. So that I think it's just a striking example of how a ransomware attack can affect our organizations.
Yeah, and that's very insightful, Salwa. Let's transition over to something that I think is more in your wheelhouse because you're in the consulting business. Foundational security practices are pivotal in safeguarding against current and future threats, such as identity access management, which is a big, front and center identity access management, because once Active Directory gets compromised, it's game over. Yeah. Zero trust, IT governance. How do you see these and other practices important for organizations to consider how they go and deliver that to their ecosystem?
They are critical. Identity access and role-based access to our data is the key to everything, right? And how to make sure that we implement the rules of identity access. So role-based, so me as a technician, as an example, I am not authorized, I should not be authorized to look at all patient data, only my patients for a specific part of their data and only throughout a period of time. There is never a carte blanche for any clinicians to see all patient data. So identity access, we talk about the firewalls, we talk about the endpoint protection, network segmentation, that's only to minimize.
Right after my heart, Salwa.
Yeah, I know.
Network segmentation, micro-segmentation, that's in our wheelhouse.
Exactly. Network segmentation is critical. So if and when any cyber attack happens, at least you can protect your crown jewels of the data and the devices and the software that would enable the organization to provide services. All of these technology and what we see, the security solutions, are key to everything. However, the side point is we see clients have 70 to 80 point solutions. So they buy services and tools from different vendors. Most of the time, they don't integrate with each other. Most of the time, nobody knows what's happening here. They don't have a 360 view of the entire vulnerability and the landscape, which creates other gaps in the healthcare system coming from their IT and technology landscape. So now they have to harmonize their environment. They have to find automated threat detection. And, let's talk about the AI and the machine learning.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. And actually, I'm curious to know how many of our audience has been using ChatGPT and then how many? A show of hands. Okay, not
All
everybody
right.
yet, huh?
We're over 50%, but
Less, I think,
zero.
less than 50%, huh? So, this is going to change the entire concept and landscape of how we are using AI as a diagnostic assistance, as, the clinician, as we say, they don't have the capacity to remember all of the medical literature. Having an AI like a ChatGPT and the others would be a great help to see what's happening here. How can we personalize that? What do we see worked or haven't worked in this treatment protocol? We talk about genomics and sequencing and personalized healthcare. AI can be a great help to all of the clinical sites, especially medical education, diagnostic tools, and identifying the right treatment protocols for a specific patient. So, and we're going to see more and more. I mean, you can see how OpenAI and the ChatGPT, and now it's what? Are we GPT-5? 4, 5.
5's coming, yeah.
5's coming. Google came up with something similar. Everybody's going to do that. So there is no going back to a system that is not using AI as part of their solution. On the other side as well, the hackers also have access to that, right? So the hackers will have access to AI, and they would be able to reverse engineer and all of these systems. Talking about quantum computing, how we can use the quantum computing. For us, that's going to completely eradicate what we use, what we know as security solutions, because it's just changing the norm. It's like changing the dimension from a 2D, 3D to an ND kind of a landscape. And once these fall in the wrong hands, then we become more and more vulnerable. And it's a maturity curve. When we talk to our clients, nobody can say that we are secure, we are done, we're good. It's a continuous 24/7 journey effort to combat all of the cyber attacks, and mainly have a very efficient business continuity. Disaster recovery is key to all of that.
Yeah, clean data.
Clean data.
That's what everybody is trying to go through when they have a ransomware program, is how do I get out of the failover fast enough? How do we back up and restore? Do we have clean data? Do we have an attorney on retainer? Some of our great partners like Accenture. Do we have sometimes the CFO might be like not know how to buy crypto. I mean, I have to have my kids sit on my phone. So if the CFO doesn't know how to buy crypto, how do they get out of the event?
Exactly.
One of the things, is anybody in the room concerned about third or fourth party risk?
Yeah.
Because we've seen a lot of the major compromises. Don't leave me with the only one with my hand up. Anybody concerned about third or fourth party risk, evaluating contracts. But one of the things, Salwa, I wanted to ask you about was, let's talk about IT governance and clinical business alignment,
Yes.
because that's some of the conversations. I know Troy was supposed to be here today, but when we talked to some very successful CISOs, when he ran his program, it's the rotating reevaluation of contracts. But from a governance and
the clinical guidelines.
business,
I know.
let's talk
I
about
think
that.
this is a very important topic, Jay. IT governance really is the one that sets, this is the discipline that sets all of the policies and procedures across the entire organization. So, it includes not just cybersecurity, but the entire technology that is deployed in a healthcare organization and other industries as well. Having that align with the clinical guidelines, this has the major effect of reducing inefficiencies, reducing costs, reducing redundancies, making sure that the clinical staff have what they need and they allocate most of their time members for the patient care. This is critical, and really it's a trigger for the innovation that comes in medical research.
Right.
We want to make sure that the clinical staff cares for the patients, deploys all of the innovation to the patient care, but also have the most efficient organizations. We talk about operational excellence, and operational excellence is key to have a well-defined, efficient organizations that deploy their resources efficiently. Everybody knows what they have to do, eliminate the redundancies, eliminate adverse reactions that what might lead to fatalities in patient care. So it has when we talk about the COO or even the CEO, that should be top priority, aligning the clinical guidelines, the clinical protocols, and the top of the medical practices as a culture, as a practice of how the organization is deploying IT governance everywhere. And I think you see that in your clients as well. When we do business together, we always talk about the governance model,
right,
and that it has to go as a horizontal layer across all projects, making sure that they are harmonized and have efficient use of all of the resources.
Yeah, and most of the successful engagements we have not been around product-centric. It's about patient satisfaction, clinician satisfaction, because the higher the scores on our patient satisfaction, the more you attract people to go to your hospital and health system. And then the clinician satisfaction is how do we recruit, retain, and hire, because there is a shortage of staff, whether it's physicians, physicians' assistants, nursing. We're hearing all about this. The whole clinical side of the business is impacted right now because of what's going on and wearing people out.
Yeah.
Cybersecurity talent gap.
Yes.
Some of the things that we've seen in the business, and we've invested at Fortinet in our training program. We've trained almost 1 million people, plus or minus 1 million. I can't remember right now, but we spent the last 3 years investing in that. We've engaged in some programs with junior colleges and universities. But Salwa, what have you seen from the Accenture perspective, and your perspective, on how some strategies to overcome the cybersecurity skill shortage?
So it is a huge skills shortage, not just in IT, but specifically in cybersecurity skills. And we're talking about, you don't need to have a college degree to be part of the security practice. Accenture has been also training many talents, and many people are interested in going into the field. When we talk to our clients, they have very limited resources, Jay. They cannot keep up with all of we talked about the tools and the software, the projects that they have to undertake. And there is a big diagram that I really like, the decisions that the CEO and the C-board C-level have to make, which is buy, borrow, or bot. So you can buy these services from large security companies. You can build, if you can have the internal resources to build, which is very, very hard. And then you can bot, which is the automation, using AI, using the automated threat detection. Look at what's happening in the SIM industry as well. Nobody as a security analyst can keep up with the millions of incidents that come to their desk per minute. That we see that as a fatigue from the security analysts. Using the technology to automate all of these processes would be very helpful.
Yeah.
To combat the skills shortage.
Yeah, so more than 1 million jobs that are available out there in cybersecurity right now.
Yeah.
We see, partners come in with either staff augmentation or automation or MSP, managed service practices to come. And as a customer, we recommend, you identify an area that you're not proficient at or you want to outsource or have some sort of complementary services, because in healthcare, whether you're payer provider, pharma, life sciences, retail healthcare, there's some sort of tribal knowledge needed to run that organization. So we don't ever want a full outsource, but there's some sort of complementary, because we're in the business of providing patient care.
Absolutely. And frankly, these companies provide very cost-effective solutions. You don't have to upskill, you don't have to train. The service comes, it's a turn-on-key kind of solutions, and it is follow-the-sun model. So you would have sources and resources from North America, across the entire globe, looking after your landscape, looking after your threats, and invoking your incident response plan if there is a big incident happening there.
So I'm like a 5-year-old at Christmas on this last question here, Salwa. What advanced security technologies that allow healthcare organizations to stay one step ahead of the threat actors?
Yeah.
Because I've got something that I think is really cool, but I want you to tell the crew what you're saying.
I think having a solid strategy as number one, and believe it or not everybody has a solid security strategy of what to do with the strong governance. We can see all of these advancement in security. We talked about identity access management. We talked about app security. We talked about how we are looking at endpoint security. Med device security is very important.
It's very near and dear to my heart. We've got a bunch of active projects going on right now.
Yes, for the IOMT security. And the thing is, we have to monitor all of these vulnerabilities. Who comes in, the implantable devices that the patients would come, having an insulin pump or a pacemaker. These are also very present danger if not protected and monitored all the time. So if there is a one magic bullet, having a solid strategy around all of these projects, making sure that the tools are integrated, are harmonized, because no matter, even if you spend millions of dollars as an organization, that doesn't mean that you are secure. Sometimes you have tons of gaps and vulnerabilities. Having a periodic and regular assessment of your risk. Where are your risk factors and your risk tolerance? How much risk can you tolerate? Because everybody has to tolerate some risk. And we are seeing also the cyber insurance as a practice that mandates assessments all the time. Is there a golden bullet for all of that? It's the whole cohesive program.
Yeah, and we're getting feedback from customers the same way, that with the Fortinet security fabric, and you talk about integrating multiple products, and that's why we have an ecosystem where we can integrate with more products that aren't ours. One of the things that we've seen is how do we get in front of ransomware? And talking about advanced security technologies with the digitization, we have a product called Fortinet Recon. What it does is it goes and tracks all your digital assets, automated versus handing somebody a Post-it note and saying, can you go find all these digital assets? There's somebody digital squatting. The other one is, I live on a farm, we have mouse traps everywhere. Out in the barn, because there's field mice show up. And so we have a product called Deceptor. And Deceptor is one way where if a threat actor compromises that, it's going to identify where they're coming from in the threat landscape, what country of origin, what they're trying to do, and it parks them in the sandbox technology, or detonates what that threat is into the environment. And we talk about medical devices and two-factor authentication and all those things that we want protected. When we set up a fake two-factor authentication portal, Microsoft, because everybody's in Office some way, shape, or form, as well as the patient portal. Yeah. When somebody goes into a fake one, we kind of know who's there. So I think that's the advanced technology that we like to see out there.
And not to forget also the proactive approach. We should not be just sitting there waiting for a cyber attack. We have to be proactive in looking at all of these anomalies, looking at what's happening, trends around the world, and all of this traffic, traffic problems that we can see. So this is the role of AI that can ingest tremendous amount of data and predicts that there is something happening in this part of the world from these suspicious IP addresses, from this, what's happening and this is what happened in WannaCry. It was happening in the UK with NHS as a target, but came to us and we were prepared for part of our organizations for that. So having a proactive approach is key into preventing and really just minimizing the effect and the risk of a cyber attack on the hospital.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even advanced technology. It's coming in with the security program, sticking to it, whether it's high trust, NIST, some of the hygiene on if you don't know what you own, how do you protect it? So sometimes it's a ServiceNow CMDB problem, which tied into cybersecurity. If you don't know you have an extra 12,000 PCs laying around out there that have your IP addresses, that's a problem.
Yep.
So Salwa, let's turn it over. Let's ask some questions. Are there any questions from the floor?
Yes.
We could talk about AI and machine learning and how we leverage that within the healthcare business all day long, but just want to open up the floor to some questions. Mr. Sean Riley's got a microphone.
If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate. I have a question.
Go ahead, Sean.
Go ahead.
I think it's probably on some of the minds in this room. So the word cloud, 15, 20 years ago, everyone had 15 different definitions of cloud. I bet you if I asked someone in this audience, we asked 10 people what zero trust means to them, we probably get 10 to 15, 10 different answers, right? I would love to understand what each of you see zero trust as?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things you guys talked about,
Yes.
zero trust could probably make a lot of that less complicated.
I agree.
But I would love to get you guys' take
Yeah.
on what that is.
Yeah, so this is a great, I mean, everybody, as you said, talks about zero trust, which means that nobody in the organization is to be trusted. Nobody, even within the network. We are seeing insider threats as well. We didn't talk about
Insider threats, yes.
Insider threats
Mergers and
is-
acquisitions, insider threats.
Exactly.
Big challenge.
Exactly. So, the recent leaks of the sensitive documents that happened a couple of days ago, that was an insider threat. That was not a cyber attack. It was somebody with a huge access, with a big security, top security clearance, who leaked these documents. Zero trust is making sure that authentication and validation of who has access to data at any given point in time is examined all the time, 24/7. Nobody has an absolute access to the sensitive data through networking, through, as you said, multi-factor authentication, through third-party, and actually not just third-party risk, fourth-party risk.
Fourth-party risk.
And fifth-party risk. It's a supply chain problem. And looking at profiling who comes in your organization, who has the access. We also didn't talk about behavior analytics. So if we see a certain anomalies in a user or an entity that is exfiltrating data, as an example, in an unusual time, or inquiries about unusual records, this behavior analytics can only be done as part of the zero trust network, as part of noticing and monitoring the networking traffic and the access from an access and identity management problem.
Yeah, I mean, the only time that's ever happened that was good was when that gentleman outsourced his job to somebody in China. They actually programmed better than he did.
Yeah.
But I agree with you on the zero trust. Is when, Sean, your question is, what do we identify as zero trust? Is, do we create policy as a company and programmatically on who has access to what, where, when, why, and how, and they only have access to that, and they're consistently pinged and identified to be a good actor or not within the network. We've all had people in IT go and troll through payroll and find out what it is.
Yes.
Some people in sensitive data want for gambling reasons, right? So if there's an athlete, remember, I don't know, it's already been 10 years when Peyton Manning had the neck surgery, people were betting if he was coming back or not.
Yeah.
So those kind of compromises and the injury reports, the gamblers all want that kind of thing. So protecting that data, it's pretty critical.
Absolutely. So this is very critical. I'd like to see, there is a question here.
So we had a DR exercise recently, and based on a breach that happened, and the threat actors gained access to an admin credential, probably through phishing, but then they just went in and lived off the land, and they were exfiltrating data at a very low rate. How do you monitor for the exfiltration of your data that's not going through email?
Yes.
They're just setting up an SFTP with the admin credentials that they've come through.
Yeah. So yeah, there are different ways to do that, but look at how the subtle mode that they used. And typically we see by the time the organization realizes that there is a breach, the hackers have been already in the system 4, 5, 6 months, exfiltrating large amounts of data without encrypting the system, they are just exfiltrating it. And there are, you use all of that where you talked about the behavior analytics. You talk about the networking traffic. Is the data exfiltration, even if it's a very low rate, they are not taking thousands of patient records at a time. But if you look at that, if there is a new flow of data that's happening in one direction from a certain IP address, that should be detected from your SIM solution. It should be, you're looking at that, and also, whether or not social media, sometimes, because it leaked from the dark web, and they say, hey, we have this patient record, or some patients would know that their data is out there, sensitive data. There are different ways to do that, and I'd like to hear your point as well, Jay. This is part of the most dangerous cyber attacks. taking the patient data, and the whole idea is to sell them in the dark web. They can do blackmail. They can do, depending on the sensitivity of the data. And we've seen that in some of the mental health institutions in Europe. It was one of the most devastating cyber attack ever because of the sensitivity of the data and the fact that it was a mental health facility for children. So not just they were getting paid by the ransom from the hospital, they were blackmailing the patients one-to-one. And of course, the organization had to pay severe penalties for something similar to HIPAA, GDPR. So having the top of mind of behavior analytics, networking, trafficking all the time, any change in the norm, and frankly, I think the automation part would be, it's like you're using your credit card and the bank calls you because there is a strange transaction coming from a company in China, or you're supposed to be here. They immediately detect that even for $20, there is something wrong with this transaction. So localization of if you are here, but you are purchasing in a different country, that triggers all of these alerts. Yeah, great use case. Thank you for talking about that.
Yeah, and from our perspective, there's two things. Cybersecurity is a team sport. So having everybody hyper aware, and it's happening more and more over the last few years with some of the high profile breaches, like Salwa said, 6 months, the threat actors live in there and then they exfiltrate a massive amount of data. And it's not just spending more money on technology. Most of these issues, it's people, process, technology. So you can't just go and buy every shiny light tool and adopt them all at 20%, but are we running a security program? I joke all the time, I'm way too goal orientated. So if you're driving toward NIST framework or high trust and getting certified, that kind of program to where we have less value-added resellers and less people we buy product from, and we have a program where we have a gap here and we've had an assessment, those kind of things, and leveraging the AI technologies, because we have technology, multiple other competitors have technology. When they watch that behavioral analytic and they see something where there's a higher frequency of data traffic coming out of an IV pump or something crazy within a clinical environment that shouldn't have access to that, that's where some of the programmatic things will come into play.
Thanks, guys. Anybody have any other questions? Chatty room. We got to serve liquor next time.
Yeah. We covered everything, right?
We did cover a lot.
Yeah.
We
did
covered a lot of
lot.
ground, yeah.
Yeah.
We
did.
covered a lot.
We should put the envelopes
Well,
of
you know
money
what?
under the
I have
seats.
something, and I bet you it's on their minds too. Because we have, I think, 15 minutes. And we want to put on a good show for HIMSS. How about, you said it a little bit just before, Jay, about, well, you can't continue to throw technology at the problems, right? You obviously have risk analysis, like how much risk can an organization actually, assume? And then they look at, can we offset it with cybersecurity insurance, which is going through its own transition, recently. So maybe to Salwa, when talking to executives, like how do they process that? Like what is enough?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it if I cover 80%, is that enough?
Yeah.
If I'm covered 90, is that enough? What's my risk? Maybe comment on that for some of the audience.
It's a great question. It's really, when we talk about risk, because we always talk about qualitative measures, right? Can we risk having our patient data stolen? Can we risk being out of service for 1 week, 1 month? Are we financially viable to do that? And I think looking at the risk from a quantitative perspective helps a lot. You play these kind of scenarios of, so we get a cyber attack, we lose X number of patient records, we cannot do the business. How can we quantitatively do that and put the top priority risks here, and how we can tackle those priorities in a good way that would minimize and reduce the possibilities of that? No, it really is a probability game. And ideally, when you see the CISO working, mostly reporting to the CIO or the CTO, sometimes they have different agendas. The CIO or the CTO, they want to put security in all of the technology solutions in the organization, whereas the CISO wants to prevent cyber attacks. And frankly, if everything has been put as a security from day one, this would not have all of these C-level executives combating what the definition of security is, the definition of risk is. So what's the appetite? What's your appetite for risk? How much can you take on? And me, if I were as a cyber insurance company, I would look very closely on who I can insure or not. This is the exercise they play. Do you have a robust system? Do you have a good strategy? Is it executed and enforced? Do you have the policies and procedures in place? Do you have the right personnel, the contractors, the vendors that you are using? How are you deploying the IT governance? We talked about IT governance. If any of these is missing, I would not insure the organization because I will be taking a huge risk on my part. And given the sensitivity of the industry, the organizations will see difficulties all the time getting insurance for cybersecurity. It's not going to be easy anymore. So this quantitative part is key, and we can always help with that. Jay, your take on it.
I'm going to give my take from working with Troy Ament, who's not here today, and a couple of great CISOs. In the spirit of partnership, what is everybody's contractual stomach on this? So we can go and sit around and talk about how we're going to have, delivery program and cybersecurity posture improvement and a variety of different things. But when it comes down to it, when the risk is shared through some sort of business associate agreement, what's our liability look like? If we're going to have to change 5 words in here, that's how serious we are on distributing some of the risk. We've seen some of that, as well as the governance and the CISO's office reporting into the CEO and directly to the board. We've seen some changes on the org charts with that to where they get out of the, hey, I want to go cloud first, and hey, I'd like to go do this, and hey, security, we don't have enough money to do this. Those conversations disappear when the CISO now has responsibility to the CEO, and they have a quarterly board meeting, and it's matured from probably about 4 years ago to where the budgeting was not nearly as fluid as it is now when there's different threat vectors or investments that need to be made or mergers and acquisitions. The M&A landscape has always been crazy, whether it's on the pharma side, the payer side, or the provider side. Small clinic, big hospital, somebody neglects tech for a long time. So, in your question, Sean, that's where we see customers with, going to the partnership level and then having a program when they do make an acquisition so that when, it's a math equation, for lack of a better term.
Really
so they
is.
say, we buy an entity that's got, a small doctor's practice, great, that's going to cost us, ABC times all these things that we need to go and outfit them. But we have a bigger shop that we know they've been on the market for, from day one till day acquisition, there's always some sort of technical debt that somebody neglects, whether it's phones,
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
operational downtimes with phones.
It is.
Those things need to be accrued for and understood in the risk score.
And a big job for the chief risk officer, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah. Reviewing all those contracts all the time.
exactly.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question, or maybe one or two.
Yes.
Following up on the topic of technical debt,
Oh,
flat networks are often in place, particularly a lot of times with acquisitions and that type of thing. And coming out of ransomware attacks, I think the one of the most popular common themes I see is folks go, geez, I wish we had segmentation in place. I think that there's a lot of challenges in segmenting in healthcare. And I guess, and you used that great word, microsegmentation.
well, yeah, we
And
love
so,
microsegmentation.
Can you talk a little bit about strategies for accomplishing reasonable segmentation, microsegmentation, without stopping business practices?
Right, so that's a great question. So there's a couple things. One, at Fortinet, we have 500 ecosystem partners. So we integrate with either somebody that we provide value with or a competitor sometimes. we'd love to back up a Fortinet truck, empty it out with 50 plus products, but it's not reasonable. When you talk about segmentation and micro-segmentation, we've got 5 or 6, marquee visibility partners that's what they're in the business of. So some of our most successful use case, what vertical, like what part of the healthcare business are you in? Hartford Healthcare? Okay, so you're a provider. When we go through Connected Medical on one of these projects with either network access control or our FortiGate firewalls to go and do that segmentation and parse that traffic off. But the visibility partners are in the business of indexing. So I always joke about Post-it notes because everybody used to go, hey, here's a Post-it note, Sal, I'm going to take care of this. Or give me one, I'll make sure it gets done. Well, when you have 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 devices in your environment and somebody sends an alert that says, blah, 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 pump has a vulnerability, and you're like, great, what facility is this at? We've got 50,000 devices. You said it had somebody have Post-it note on a clipboard and they're going to be gone for 3 weeks, right? We don't have time for this. So when we start a micro-segmentation project, some of our most successful things on the lab. You got to start somewhere, right? It's kind of like fitness. We got to start somewhere and start walking. When we do micro-segmentation, though, with the FortiGate firewall and a visibility partner, that gets you indexed immediately, and you can identify all the assets on your network. And then on the flip side of that, we provide protection. And then if we need to continually segment, that's how, from a, listen, I don't have all the nuts and bolts and all the, different technical terms on it, but that's when we've seen successful customers that have done that. And when they go through technical debt on mergers and acquisitions, having that prescriptive plan, and that's where we come in to where you can get next-gen firewall, SD-WAN, wired and wireless network all in one box on all those small facilities. That has customers doing deployments 3 a day. As I joke, I was young enough where we do 3 clinics a year with some major providers. We'd have cigars and bourbon at the end of the year. Wow, we had a great year. There's some initiatives from some of these retail outfits to do 3 a day, and we're part of the technology stack there. So, if we want to sit down and talk segmentation, we're at booth 873. Nate, our solution architect's here. He ran the largest network in the state of Oklahoma, and we're happy to talk in more detail. Salwa, you have any comments on micro-segmentation? Because I'm sure you guys have plenty of engagements.
We have
doing
plenty
that.
of engagement. And, as you said, having a brilliant security architect that is looking on the overall enterprise architecture, and the design should be based on utilization of all of the parts of the hospital. You are in the provider's market, utilization, functionality of the different departments, and making sure that it is modular. The architecture should be modular, agile as well, and functional. So it is a big project, and frankly, one of the most important projects that any organization, any company should do is looking at the infrastructure, and part of it is the networking segmentation and micro-segmentation. The architecture has to be solid and modern and agile so that you can build upon it. You can change it. It's in an agile way, and it really protects your assets, protects all of your connected devices, including medical devices. So,
Thanks, guys. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question.
Any other questions? Any other questions? We have 5 minutes. Yeah, no? One last thing on Connected Medical. Can you guys comment a little bit on the Patch Act, some of the things that are cooking there, whether we believe in it or not?
Oh, I totally believe in it.
And then,
Yes.
and then kind of roll into the Connected Medical. I think it's really important. It's something that's important to Fortinet. We've been contacted by multiple manufacturers to try to figure out, a different approach. But
Yes.
So is anybody in the room familiar with the Patch Act and what that is bringing to the table? Thanks, my man. So at the end of the day, they're going to legislate their way out of it. So normally, we've seen GE devices that have Windows whatever, Windows 95 maybe, that have been dropped off 20 years ago. But the Patch Act is going to force cybersecurity controls and a bill of materials and lifecycle management, so the provider space does not have to continually get stuff dropped off and then be responsible for that risk that gets dropped in the environment, patient safety and whatnot. So the 2 coins on the Patch Act is it's going to ask the providers to have a detailed inventory. So we talk Connected Medical and our partnerships with some of the visibility partners. That is what the provider is going to have to go and identify as what's on your network. What do you own? Where is it at? The flip side of that is when the security bill of materials, software bill of materials, and lifecycle management, all in the medical device side. So we've got a customer that's global that we manage 40,000 devices of their lab equipment. And one of the most powerful things, I'm glad you brought this up, Sean, but one of the most powerful things is there was a major compromise out west. And the after action report, they were down for 7 weeks, 120 million bucks, what have you. And they brought in everybody. They said, why is your lab equipment still work? And he said, well, we use FortiGate, strict IPS lists, and we manage and update all of our software and security for you as a customer. So they have to negotiate on the front end where the customer says, oh, we're a blah, blah, blah shop, and we can't have this other device in there because we can't manage it. And that's where some of what our passion has been. We're working with about a dozen major medical device manufacturers because in October, you're going to have those controls in there. So if you're in the provider space, maybe in this lifetime, you won't have to worry about that when they cycle all that equipment out on net new gear, and it'll be positive on improving patient safety. So I want to do the last comment
Yeah,
on this.
no, absolutely. So the FDA has released two significant regulations in the past few weeks and months. The Patch Act, which is, as Jay, you mentioned, very critical. You would be surprised how many med devices that don't get patched for many different reasons. One of them is the manufacturers don't have the capacity to patch all of these devices globally, like the GE, the Medtronic, the Siemens of the world. And also that there is a reluctance of within the healthcare system because they don't have the time, that they don't have the downtime is costing them money to patch, to upgrade, to have all of these security measures. The second legislation came a couple of days ago for the legacy medical devices, specifically because when we say security by design, this is really going for the new medical devices. There are tons of legacy medical devices that have to be monitored all the time. We cannot embed security in the source code anymore, but we can monitor their behavior. We can monitor who has access to that. We can get them off of the connectivity part if doesn't affect their usability. So there is a big chapter that just came from the FDA about the legacy medical devices. And it's a big, complex domain. It's a shared responsibility between the manufacturers and, frankly, the provider market has to be in the command cycle here to demand patching and upgrading and security measures from the manufacturers.
That's great. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. So
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate everybody's attendance.
Yes, thank you.
I think this was an amazing chat. I learned a little bit. That's awesome. If anybody wants to talk a little bit more with Fortinet or Accenture, you guys can come to 873 in what hall again? North? I forget. which one.
South. We are in the South Hall.
In the south, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
South.
And-
Yeah, so Fortinet 873. If there's any questions you guys have after, we'll be hanging out. Again, really appreciate it. Have a great HIMSS. And that's it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jay, that was excellent.
Hang on. Don't go anywhere.